All right, guys. A little while back, I mentioned that I had a piece of 4-inch pipe that if I could find, you guys might find interesting. And I had found it, so I'll show it to you guys. It's a piece of 4-inch carbon steel pipe, standard wall. Nothing too fancy about it. I've got a frame and square set here so I can show you what is interesting about it. So, framing square set up along the line, and the piping has some deflection. Some. It also has, let's see if I can set a light so I can accentuate this. Throw my Thorpe up here. Yeah, it has a bulge, an external deviation. Stand this up. Let you guys look inside it. Excuse the noise. I'm horrible about this kind of stuff. Anyway, let's see if I can get this thing to focus. There we go. The inside, although the bulge is visible all the way around the circumference, it doesn't have any localized thinning. This was confirmed by UT thickness readings, in that there were deviations less than 5 thou, less than 5 mils between the normal wall thickness and areas of the deflection and the bulge. It had some weird lines. I think these were just handling marks. Okay, so the service background. This is the piping, the inlet piping of a product heater, a process heater, for a crude unit. There was a flange back this direction, and about a foot this direction was the wall of the heater. And then it went into a manifold and the rest of the tubes. The piping wasn't straight. It had some soft pads on there, so I took the soft pads off. This place was real good about letting you take off soft pads just to look at stuff while it was in service. This was a number of years ago, so that was not an unusual thing to do back then. In a lot of facilities, it's still not. Anyway, I took the soft pads off, and I noticed the bulge. There was another product heater, a sister of this one, or brother, depending on how you want to look at the lineage. It was a near exact match, been made by the same manufacturer, installed, I think, at the same time. It also had an inlet piece of pipe that was exhibiting a similar condition. The piping came down from the rack, dropped down from a 25-foot overhead rack. This was mounted at about my eye level, so about 6 feet. Ran through a big, I believe it was a 900-pound flange, 900 class flange, which is rather unusual for a crude unit. I don't remember if the product heater had been bought for that facility or if they had bought it from somewhere else when we were using it for another service. And that might have been the case for why this is deflected. But anyway, there was no account for thermal growth. There wasn't a spring can. There wasn't a expansion loop. There wasn't any thought for thermal growth. And near as I can tell is they used to run the unit down around 400 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is for you guys that are running centigrades and Celsiuses. But in Freedom units, it's 400 degrees. They had upped the unit from 400 degrees to over 650. It ran 660, 675. When I identified this piece of pipe, I went back and looked at the trending data for operations. And near as I could tell, it had been running pretty steady at 650 degrees Fahrenheit for a while. For the data that I was able to get. I'm not saying they didn't have an excursion above that temperature. I'm just saying that in the data I reviewed, the trending data for the operation, I never found any temperatures above 650 degrees. and using both an infrared thermometer and then later a contact thermocouple, it was operating at the indicated temperatures, right around, like say, 650, 675, which is really hot for a crude unit. But this facility was known for pushing them pretty hard. The inlet feed split. It actually split off a 8-inch and 6-inch line before it dropped down to this 4-inch diameter and went into the two process heaters parallel, which maybe that explains why it had a similar condition. The piping configuration was essentially the same as this one. The reason I have this piece of pipe is I identified this, brought it to the facility's attention, said, hey, look, there might be some localized thinning here. It's definitely deflected enough that there's some localized stresses here. That's not a conservatively safe situation. Some finite analysis may be needed to determine if it's really safe to operate other than just safety factor. They declined that. And it ran for almost another solid year before the unit came down for a standard turnaround. They were not expecting to replace it during the turnaround. They ended up replacing it, and the reason they did, though, wasn't because of this. They went to start the unit back up, and that place was famous for not circulating cold and warming up for startup. They would literally light the burners and start heating with whatever was in the tubes and piping. They would just start up. Rather cavalier way of operating a facility, I thought. My opinion and all. Anyway, during that turnaround, they had modified some piping, added some valves, some bypass loops, and other stuff. And it had been done in the fall. It was a Thanksgiving turnaround. I spent Thanksgiving Day out there, in fact. That's the only reason I remember it. Anyway, during startup, which they tried to start it up Thanksgiving night, they had gotten slugs of water in the piping that didn't get pushed out during the startup. And this product heater, the product heater this was attached to, ended up rupturing tubes downstream of this, probably from water, converting water into super steam. Since steam expands 1,600 plus times volumetrically from water to steam, they ruptured tubes. And because of that, they had to repair this product heater and its parallel companion. While they were repairing it, I got them to go ahead and replace this piping all the way back to the flange. And because of that, this bulge was finally removed from service. There's actually the other bent tube like this, piece of piping. It's not a tube since it's outside of the product heater. I don't know where it's at. My cohort at the time took his to use as a doorstop, and I don't know if he still has his. I have mine. I found it kicking around. I used it for a doorstop long time, and then from subsequent moves, it got set out of the way. But anyway, I thought you guys would find that interesting. Thanks for watching. Let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.